great tragedy from writing in A Cask of Jerepigo by Herman Bosman. The older I grow, the more puzzled I get as to what life is for and how to live it. Since my early adolescence, I have had one fervent longing: to have 12 months of leisure in which I should be able to devote myself in exclusiveness and abandonment to the task of writing the things that have surged blindly inside me for expression. Just a quiet room somewhere, and a piece of floor space to lie down on, and pen and ink, and a ream of 34-pound cream-laid paper cut into quarter size. That's the one thing I've wanted all my life, and always it has evaded me. There have been times when I have seemed on the verge of achieving this ambition, and then, on each occasion, what has seemed to be the beginning of this period of leisure has in actual fact been but the prelude to fresh turmoil, the calm before the storm. I can always get the ream of cream laid easily enough, and my connections with the printing industry make it a simple matter for me to get a quad cap ream cut into the right size sheets, and the ink is cheap. A piece of quiet floor space and a strip of hessian to lie on, though more difficult to procure, are not completely beyond the range of my organizational capacity. But it is then, when I have got all these things together, and I am well set on Act 1, Scene 1, of a sublime high tragedy, and I have got to enter Bernardus van Aswegen. It is then that the outside world enters, with shouting and banners, and I proceed to roll up my strip of hessian, and I sighfully set light to the 34-pound cream laid, and I take the nib out of the pen holder, and break off the point, and fasten a strip of folded paper to the back of it, and shoot it into the ceiling. I don't remember, just offhand, how many times in my life I've got as far as enter Bernardus van Aswegen, and at that point the world has entered, swearing and flat-footedly trampling. Sometimes it has been creditors. On one occasion it was the bailiffs. Once it was a demolition gang come to tear down the building. Once also it was the police. And always I've had to get up from the floor with Bernardus's momentous opening speech unwritten. I've got so now that I accept it as inevitable that there is a curse on Bernardus van Aswegen. He is bad luck. He will never be allowed to walk onto the center of the stage, his brow furrowed in thought, his right arm raised dramatically to say, but it is okay. I won't write down the opening words of his speech, which I know off by heart, just as well as he does. I don't want this article to be interrupted also. I have learned cunning with the years. And with the years I have begun, in some strange fashion, to identify myself with Bernardus van Aswegen. I feel that the world won't allow him to have his say, any more than it will allow me to have my say. This gives me a queer sense of intimacy with Bernardus. What he feels, I feel. His hopes are my hopes. And we have both learnt the same truth from life, Bernardus and I. And it is knowledge as ineluctable as death. And that is that we are both doomed to eternal frustration every time we really want to open our mouths. And I regret to say that with the years, Bernardus van Aswegen has begun to grow embittered. There is today a cynical twist to the left part of his upper lip that I don't like. It doesn't help him to win and keep friends, and it's no use my trying to reason with him either. "Aren't I as good as Lear?" he asks of me. "What has Othello got that I haven't? And you know I can run rings around Hamlet, can't I?" "Well, Bernardus," I reply, "I wouldn't say rings, but as good, yes. And there's that soliloquy I've got for you on the death of your little daughter. And I started it all so long ago that we've both grown so old in the meantime that I'm afraid it will now have to be your little granddaughter. And there's that opening speech right in the beginning, in the first scene, when you say..." "Oh, cut it out," Bernardus replies petulantly. "I never get so far. If it isn't creditors, it's men with picks and shovels, or it's a couple of Johns from Marshall Square." "Don't use such dreadful soliloquisms, Bernardus," I answer soothingly. "Remember, you're a character in a great tragedy. Don't say Johns." And so it goes on. But I'm trying to write of life and its meaning, if any, and I've reluctantly come to accept a conclusion that has been persistently forced on me by external circumstances. I cannot evade this conclusion. Within my own experience, the same situation has repeated itself over and over again. I believe that, speaking strictly for myself personally, the practice of creative art of letters is contrary to the laws and demands of life. It's always when I've turned out my best work and I've received the right sort of recognition for it too, in terms of people dubiously inquiring as to whether I think that I should go on writing at all. It is at these times when my creative powers, such as they are, have been at their peak, that the worst kinds of disaster have invariably overtaken me. And this is something that I cannot understand. I've become afraid to pick up my pen, or when I do, to dip it too deep into the ink. This is something that I've noticed applies to other writers as well. Recently I read another biography of Edgar Allan Poe, in which the story of his life is related with a strict regard to chronology. I got to 1845. This year, states the biographer, was a year of great literary creativeness for Edgar Allan Poe. Next year, 1946, I thought, Edgar Allan Poe will have dropped in the you-know-what. I read on and found out that by 1846 he had. Taking it by and large, it is far better not to write. But I think I've solved the problem of Bernardus van Aswegen. I shall keep him out of the play until right at the end. He will enter only in the last scene of Act 5. He will come on at the opposite prompt side. He knows his lines. He walks onto the center of the stage and raises his right hand. Just as he opens his mouth, the curtain falls. Title: Bernardus van Aswegen, a tragedy in 5 acts.